You probably didn't plan to still be on your phone. You opened it for one quick thing, maybe to check a message, glance at the news, or scroll for a minute before bed. Then somehow 20 minutes passed. Maybe an hour. Your thumb kept moving, your eyes kept scanning, and even though you felt a little heavier with every post, you didn't stop. That experience has a name now. It's called doom scrolling. And it isn't just a bad habit, it's psychology. Doom scrolling happens when we consume large amounts of negative or distressing content in one sitting, especially on social media or news platforms. It often feels automatic. You don't decide to look for bad news. It just keeps appearing. Headlines about crisis, conflict, disaster, outrage. One post leads to another, and before you realize it, your nervous system is on high alert. Part of this comes from something called negativity bias. The human brain is wired to pay more attention to threats than to neutral or positive information. Thousands of years ago, this kept us alive. Missing good news rarely had consequences. Missing danger could be fatal. So our brains evolved to prioritize anything that signals risk. Even today, your mind reacts faster and more intensely to negative headlines than to calm ones. It's not weakness, it's survival wiring. This is why alarming content grabs your attention so quickly. Your brain treats uncertainty and threat as urgent. When you see something unsettling, your mind wants more information. It wants clarity. It wants control. And scrolling feels like a way to gather that control. Each new post promises an update, a resolution, a better understanding. But the more you search, the more uncertainty you often find. There is also a reward system involved. Every time you refresh your feed, your brain anticipates something new. Sometimes it's shocking. Sometimes it's dramatic. Sometimes it confirms your fears. That unpredictability creates a variable reward loop, which is one of the strongest behavioral reinforcements the brain responds to. You don't know what the next post will be, so you keep checking. The possibility of new information keeps you engaged, even when the content is draining. What makes doom scrolling especially powerful is the illusion of productivity. It feels like staying informed. It feels responsible. In a world that moves fast, being updated can feel like being prepared. But constant exposure to distressing information doesn't actually increase your control over it. Often, it increases your anxiety instead. You gather more data, but not necessarily more peace. Another subtle factor is emotional displacement. When something in your personal life feels uncertain or overwhelming, global problems can feel strangely easier to focus on. External chaos can distract from internal discomfort. Scrolling becomes a way to avoid sitting alone with your own thoughts. It fills silence. It occupies space. It gives your mind something concrete to react to. The problem is that the cycle reinforces itself. Anxiety leads to scrolling. Scrolling increases exposure to alarming content. Exposure raises anxiety. Then you scroll again to manage that anxiety. Over time, this loop can become automatic. You don't even question it. Your hand reaches for your phone before your mind catches up. Understanding this changes the narrative. Doom scrolling isn't about lacking discipline. It's about a brain that is wired for threat detection, living inside a digital environment designed to amplify it. Once you see that, the behavior becomes less mysterious. And in the next part, we'll look at what this constant exposure is actually doing to your mind and body beneath the surface. Once doom scrolling becomes a pattern, it begins to shape more than just your screen time. It starts influencing how your nervous system operates throughout the day. When you repeatedly expose yourself to alarming or distressing information, your brain doesn't treat it as neutral content. It treats it as potential threat. Even if the danger is far away, your body reacts as if it matters right now. This reaction is subtle at first. You may feel slightly tense, more alert, or mentally restless. Over time, however, constant exposure to negative content can keep your stress response activated longer than it needs to be. Your brain releases stress hormones in response to perceived threat, and when that threat never seems to end, Your system never fully settles. You may not consciously feel panicked, but you feel wired, slightly on edge, mentally tired but unable to fully relax. This is one reason doom scrolling often leaves you feeling drained rather than informed. Your mind is processing a steady stream of unresolved problems. Crisis after crisis. Conflict after conflict. The brain prefers closure. It likes completed narratives. But social feeds rarely provide resolution. They provide updates, and updates keep the stress cycle open. There is also an emotional effect that builds gradually. When you consume large amounts of distressing information, you can begin to feel helpless. You read about problems you cannot personally fix. You witness suffering you cannot directly change. Over time, this can create a quiet sense of powerlessness. The more you scroll, the more it feels like the world is overwhelming and unstable. That perception shapes your mood, even when you step away from your phone. Another important factor is timing. People tend to scroll more when they are already stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed. In those moments, the mind looks for distraction. Doom scrolling provides immediate engagement. It captures your attention and pulls it outward. For a short time, it feels like relief because it shifts focus away from personal worries. But when you stop scrolling, the original stress is still there, often layered with new concerns from what you just read. This creates a feedback loop. Stress leads to scrolling. Scrolling increases exposure to distressing content. That content increases stress. The brain then seeks more scrolling as a way to regain control. The cycle repeats quietly until it becomes habitual. The design of modern platforms also plays a role. Infinite scroll removes natural stopping points. In the past, finishing a newspaper article or a television segment created a clear ending. Now there is no clear end. The feed continues without interruption. Without a built-in pause, your brain doesn't receive a signal that it's time to stop. It keeps searching for the next piece of information that might offer clarity or reassurance. Over time, this constant exposure can affect focus and attention. When your mind becomes used to rapid, emotionally intense content, slower tasks can feel less stimulating. Reading, studying, or even having calm conversations may feel harder to engage with because your brain has adapted to higher levels of stimulation. None of this means you are weak or incapable of self-control. It means your brain is responding to an environment that constantly triggers its threat detection system. Doom scrolling is not simply a bad habit. It is a learned pattern reinforced by biology and design. In the final part, we will look at how to step out of that pattern without disconnecting from the world entirely. By this point, it's clear that doom scrolling is not just about willpower. It's about a brain that is wired to detect threat operating inside an environment that constantly supplies it. The question now is not whether doom scrolling is understandable. It is. The real question is when staying informed quietly turns into staying emotionally stuck. There is a difference between awareness and saturation. Awareness means you check in, you understand what is happening, and then you return to your life. Saturation happens when the stream of information never stops and your mind never gets to reset. When every spare moment is filled with headlines, reactions, and commentary, your nervous system doesn't have room to settle. It remains slightly activated, even when nothing immediate is happening in your own world. Over time, this can shape how you see reality. If most of what you consume highlights crisis and conflict, your perception of the world begins to tilt in that direction. You may start to feel that things are constantly worsening, even when your personal environment is stable. This is not because you are irrational. It is because repeated exposure influences emotional memory. The brain strengthens what it encounters often. Another subtle shift is the confusion between information and action. Scrolling can feel productive. It can feel like participation. But absorbing information is not the same as influencing it. When consumption replaces meaningful engagement, it creates a quiet frustration. You know more, but you do not feel more empowered. That gap between awareness and agency can leave you feeling restless. Breaking this cycle does not require abandoning the world or deleting every app. The goal is not isolation. It is intention. Instead of opening your phone automatically, pause and ask what you are looking for. Are you seeking information, distraction, reassurance, or connection? Naming the reason reduces the automatic pull and returns a sense of choice. It can also help to create boundaries that signal completion. Setting specific times to check news or social media gives your brain a clear start and stop. Without those boundaries, the feed feels endless, and your mind treats it that way. Even small adjustments, like putting your phone out of reach during certain hours or replacing late-night scrolling with a quieter activity, can interrupt the loop. Most importantly, balance exposure with grounding experiences. Movement, conversation, creative work, and time outside reconnect your nervous system to the present. They remind your brain that not every moment is urgent. When you step away from constant digital input, you give your mind the contrast it needs to recalibrate. Doom scrolling is not a sign that you are careless or overly dramatic. It is a predictable response to an environment designed to capture attention through urgency. Once you understand that, the behavior becomes less about shame and more about strategy. You do not need to reject information. You simply need to decide how much of it you allow into your mental space. Staying informed can be healthy. Staying saturated rarely is. The difference lies in whether you feel clearer after consuming information or more unsettled. If the habit leaves you heavier, that is your signal. Awareness creates choice, and choice is what restores balance. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for the latest videos.